School bullying has been a problem forever, and everyone's experience of it is very different. Like, for some, it may not be a huge issue at all. It's something that they're comfortable dealing with themselves. For others, though, it can turn into full-on physical abuse. It escalates dramatically. And while bullying rates are bad all over the country, they're worst in Tasmania. So bad, in fact, that they're holding a parliamentary inquiry to try to figure out what to do about it. Our Tassie reporter April McLennan's been looking into it, and just a heads up, there is some pretty full-on stuff in here.
Wearing a dress to school for the first time was meant to be an empowering moment for high school student Lexi Rockcliffe. It wasn't.
The moment I walked through the gates, I was screamed at by literal 18-year-olds. I believe they were year 12s. I was 14 at the time. Actual adults screaming slurs.
Lexi is trans and bi. The dress incident happened at a Catholic school in a town on Tasmania's northwest coast.
And I looked to the teacher just preoccupied. You would think as a teacher who's specifically on duty, who is specifically standing there to make sure that every literal child walking into the area is safe, would give more than a flying rat's ass. As a 14-year-old, I felt scared. At that moment, I just felt so alone, so isolated from everybody else.
Lexi says as time went on, things got worse. She says teachers wouldn't call her by her preferred name and wouldn't let her wear a dress to school. And then a couple of years later, this happened.
My vision completely goes. He had gone and swung at me, hit me dead centre in the face, had broken my nose.
Lexi says during a religion class, another student walked up to her desk and assaulted her.
I was in pain. The blood trickled down. And I turned to the teacher and I go, "Did you not see that?" She turns to me and she goes, "I saw it. I thought he just slapped you."
Lexi's sharing her story with me because of an inquiry that's happening in Tasmania right now. She's one of many current and former students, teachers and other staff members who've put in submissions to a state inquiry investigating discrimination and bullying. It also hears from churches, other religious institutions and parents. A lot of the written submissions are extremely distressing.
I took days of work as a registered nurse to be on suicide watch as my son had disclosed to me and his GP that he had thoughts of taking his own life.
The assailants pushed the victim to the ground, pinned them down and lifted their shirt to find out if you are really a guy.
Young people refusing to use the bathroom at school because of comments from students about which toilet they should or should not be using. This results in young people dehydrating and starving themselves to avoid needing the bathroom.
Sam Watson is another former student who made a submission. He was also at a school on Tassie's northwest coast and says while he was there, he realised he was gay.
At the time, I didn't know anyone who was gay, so I didn't have anyone to show me that it was normal to be gay.
Sam says initially the teachers and students were somewhat supportive, but when he raised the idea of starting a support group for other queer students, it was quickly dismissed.
It became very clear that the senior leadership of the church would not look so favourably upon that.
And Sam says that kind of response at school can leave some deep scars as an adult.
When you're a young teenager, most of your awareness of the world comes through school. So if your school isn't actively promoting support groups and role models, etc., it's very hard to see beyond that.
So is anything going to happen from this inquiry? Well, the terms of reference include looking into the impact of discrimination and bullying on how kids do at school, on where they end up, and even on how it affects teachers themselves. It might even recommend changes to law. Sam says a lot needs to get fixed.
What really needs to change is the fact that all students and staff, irrespective of their gender, sexuality, any characteristic, really need to be welcomed, accepted and supported.
Lexi's on the same page, and she says in the meantime, trans kids in school are suffering.
Any trans person has to be strong, has to be resilient, has to be able to say, "You need to leave me alone right now."
Hack on Triple J.
April McLennan there, and in a statement, Catholic Education Tasmania told Hack they welcome the opportunity to participate in this inquiry. The Tasmanian Department of Education told us it'll be looking closely at any recommendations that come out of it and that all allegations of inappropriate behaviour in schools are taken seriously and investigated immediately. Getting some text through from people who've experienced bullying. Someone says, I was bashed daily at school for years. Nobody cared until it was me fighting back and I was getting expelled. I still have nightmares at least once a month about it. Yeah, I wanted to explore maybe the long-term impacts of bullying, how it can affect you not just immediately after school, but in the decades afterwards. Dr. Kayla Stell is a clinical psychologist at the Black Dog Institute and is with us now. Hey, Kayla, thanks for coming on Hack.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me.
A lot of people are bullied in school. We know that. Even when that part of your life is over, though, can it be a struggle to come to terms with what has happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we know is that people who experience bullying in school are also at risk for experiencing long-term mental health issues or consequences from that. And that can include things like increased risk for anxiety, depression, self-harm, and even suicidal ideation.
Yeah, I mean, they're huge kinds of things and I imagine can impact your relationships going forward and your relationship with yourself too.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about it, adolescence is such an important time for when you're forming your identity and your sense of self and also forming close relationships. So we see that people who are bullied, particularly during childhood and adolescence, can go on to have difficulties with self-esteem, with self-image or body image issues, developing a sense of trust and feeling safe in relationships as well. And this can be ongoing into adulthood.
There are people getting in touch with us now saying, yeah, I was bullied and it stuck with me and it's something that I still think about on a daily or weekly basis. Is there this tendency maybe to think after you finish school, oh, okay, well, that's done. I don't need to, seek any help or advice on that really traumatic part of my life. Like, what do you think people should be doing after school?
Yeah, so of course we would always recommend people to seek support, to seek professional support from mental health professionals like a psychologist or a counsellor, but also to seek support from trusted people in their life, so family, friends, to engage in sort of self-care practices or ways of looking after themselves and helping to heal, but also to recognise that you're not alone in this experience. We know that so many young people are bullied and that bullying can be a really isolating experience for them, but that there are people out there who care about you and want to support you and help you to, process the trauma that you've been through and develop healthy ways of being in the world.
We're hearing about just how big of a problem bullying is. We know there's this parliamentary inquiry happening in Tasmania that's looking into it. What do you think needs to change to kind of get a hold of the problem, tackle it and do something about it?
Yeah, so I mean, ideally we'd be seeing both like a bottom-up and a top-down approach to tackling the issue. So of course, we know that teachers really need more resources and they need more funding and they need more training on how to address bullying effectively. Also that young people need to be able to access mental health support in schools and also outside of school if they feel like it's safer to do so. But then when we think about the top-down effect as well, we also need to pay particular attention to bullying that's rooted in social prejudice. So particularly racism, sexism, homophobia, which we heard through some of your listeners in the story before. And we need to make sure that we're referencing policy, that our policy, particularly our anti-discrimination legislation, is up to date, and that our schools are operating within that legislation as well.
Do you have any advice for anyone who might be struggling at the moment, going through something at school or maybe at uni and they're just not sure what to do? I mean, you mentioned a bit before some of the advice of making sure you seek professional help, but is there any other,